This is the Fearless Speakers Podcast with me, Richard Jones, public speaking coach and co-organiser of TEDx Beckenham. This episode, I'm speaking to Royston John. Hello and welcome to the Fearless Speakers Podcast. I'm Richard Jones, a public speaking coach and co-leader of TEDx Beckenham. Every month, I chat to speakers and organisers from the TEDx world and beyond to give you insight into how you can create deeper connections and spark action by sharing your ideas from the stage. In this episode, I caught up with Royston John, one of our first TEDx Beckenham speakers and part of the curation team for our latest event. I asked him about his experience coming to the UK as a young child as part of the Windrush generation, what the experience was like talking about this on stage, and the impact that his TEDx talk has had on affected families since its release in 2023. Let's take a look. So welcome, Royston. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Richard. Good to be with you.
Yeah, and thanks for coming to my home here.
Mm-hmm. That's okay.
It's always nice to do it in person.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe if we just start off, just a little introduction about yourself, what you do before we get into the TEDx perspective of the podcast.
Okay, I'll try and give you a short summary.
Okay.
Yeah, so my name's Royston John, and I have a career that came through public sector for nearly 30 years. And for the last 25 years, I've been in a self-employed capacity, primarily working as a business coach with organizations and individuals. And alongside that, I run NCBI, the National Coalition Building Institute, which does equalities work, but with an emotional intelligence structure and framework. So it's an unforgettable experience. And I've been doing that for 25 years and I enjoy it. And believe me, every workshop is different.
Yeah.
So it's rich.
Yeah, I love the the emotional intelligence aspect and perspective. So because that's actually how we met, wasn't it? I came along to one of the NCBI workshops.
Yes.
And maybe let's talk a little bit about that, because it's quite interesting from the perspective of how people get into TEDx as a speaker, because I guess it wasn't even on your radar before.
TEDx was not in my psyche in any shape or form. I've since learned people kind of chase it, as it were, but it certainly wasn't in my psyche. So when you asked, would I do a TEDx talk? I thought, what? Who? Where? Well, what's that? It really was that kind of response.
Well, obviously, we'll come on to the topic of your talk.
Sure.
But it wasn't anything that you specifically talked about on the day. But I sense that there was that you had a TEDx talk in you, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
I think when I was asking, so what would I talk about? And you touched on Windrush as the concept, and I thought, oh, okay, right. And once you kind of lit that touch paper, then yes, of course, there's a full story behind it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe if we start there, then maybe give a little bit, because I know that I had a vague understanding of what happened in the late 60s.
Yeah.
People coming over from the Caribbean, but that's as far as my knowledge went, and I'm sure a lot of people will be in a similar situation. So maybe if you could give us a bit more.
Absolutely.
Background.
Yeah, because when we watch the news on the BBC, there's back in 19 blah blah blah, these people came on a boat from Emperor Windrush, and that's about the sum of it. People coming from the Caribbean to Britain, but then nobody knows the story behind that and the consequence and the impact of that, because one, everybody who came was invited, and Enoch Powell and other MPs went across the Caribbean inviting people to come and support the mother country, because Britain needs to be rebuilt after the war. So people were coming to fill the gaps in terms of rebuilding Britain. So it was by invitation that people came.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was made so attractive. We were told the streets of London are paved with gold. And you can still go to the Caribbean today and find people who've never come here who still believe that mantra. the streets of London are paved with gold. So they think we're lying to them when we say, actually, it's a tough place to be.
Yeah.
You know, but the consequence of that was some people borrowed the money to get a one-way fare to come, and in some instances left their partners behind. In a lot of instances left their children behind. You know, and my left behind was 4 years. Person I was married to was left behind for 14 years.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? You know, a huge impact psychologically, emotionally, and what have you. And for a number of children at the point of coming, their grandparents, who became the pseudo mother, for them was the mother, and they were coming to meet this strange person.
Yeah,
You
who
know,
they
so
lost contact with, maybe couldn't even remember them.
that's right.
Yeah.
You know, and my mother was used as a catalyst to keep me in check. You know, anytime anything went wrong, wait till you go meet your mother. You know, so when I was coming to meet my mother, there was some trepidation about this woman that would sort me out. You know, which was phenomenal. And of course, so the traumatic thing was those who were left behind, their grandparents, suffered loss because their child now has left, and you as that person was leaving behind your mother to come and meet this strange person. You know, and for a number of people arriving here, found that, depending on the gap, that the parents have started a new family. So, you know, I use the term love child, which is this new family born and bred in a framework in Britain. And then suddenly you're coming from the Caribbean to join that. You're the outside. You feel on the outside. And that bridge between the abandoned child and a love child in 2025 has still not been repaired.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you talk a lot in the TEDx talk about your experience, first of all, while you were still in the Caribbean, and then when you came over, and how traumatic that was. You go into quite a lot of detail, which is makes the talk even more powerful. But you're right. It also, as you say, is having a long-lasting impact.
Because it's a story of survival. How do you survive? How do you negotiate terrain when people are not talking to you about trauma, what it is, what it looks like, how it impacts, how do you repair it? And of course, that trauma is layered upon the impact of the enslavement process. So the foibles, the mannerisms, the way of behaving has been established through the enslavement process that just gets rolled forward and rolled forward and rolled forward. So the idea of affection and hugs and kisses and cuddles and what have you from parents was a kind of no-no. You know, so it just didn't happen, and you didn't see mum and dad do it. So it was outside of your framing, and the idea of being affectionate, you had to learn, you know, and make a decision to learn that as a new way of being.
Yeah, which wouldn't have come sort of instinctively.
It's not natural. Even the simple thing about, you know, going to an interview and the requirement of an interview process to look into the eyes of the panel is foreign, because the idea, staring an adult in particular in the eye was seen as insubordination.
Wow.
Yeah. So you had to lower your gaze, you know, as a way of showing respect and value, you know. So having to relearn that and apply that in an interview process, it's huge.
Yeah. This is stuff I'm learning now just in this conversation.
Yeah.
There's so many sort of layers to this.
It is completely layered.
And one of the other things I know you've told me is that, you know, families have been almost torn apart, but you're helping them to have that rebuilding process.
So the TEDx talk has been really instrumental and marvelous in connecting families, because there's a place where you're simply told, just get on with it, just get on with it. So people just get on with it and never stop to think, what's going on? Why am I feeling this way? What's caused what I'm experiencing or have experienced? And then the TEDx come, and they see through my TEDx talk their life story, because there's a parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, right. That's what happened to me. That's what happened to my parents. That's why I'm separated from my sibling. That's why the cousins aren't talking to each other. It suddenly all falls into place and makes sense. So thanks to you, I'm able to tell a story that has supported a lot of people, a lot of people. And a number of invitations have come from that to meet and to have those conversations, to allow people to talk.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Maybe give us a little bit of a sense of what that's achieved as well in terms of
So
outcome.
so through that mechanism and others, I've done 3 now, audience with Royston John at Goldsmiths University. Each have been oversubscribed.
Yeah,
You
and I
know,
came to the first one.
yeah. And you came to the first one, and I don't know if you remember when I asked the audience, well, what came up. The first woman that spoke, she said, "Why is it taking so long?" And I said, "What, taking so long for what?" "To give me a chance to bawl," she said.
Yeah.
Because again, that thing, I've been holding this tension for so long, and suddenly I've got permission to say, "Oh yes, this is what's happened to me." And that's how it's been. We've done 4 Zoom calls, and there was relationship rebuilt on the Zoom call between 2 siblings. There's been tears in the room and on Zoom. And a number of events. So I'm doing something this Friday on the back of that. This is over in Leytonstone, and I'm doing something with the Separation and Reunion Forum, which is a group of psychotherapists that have the conversation about that gap of separation. So one of the terms that they introduce, for example, is barrel children. All right. And the idea is that the children were left behind. Mummy sent a barrel from England with, stuff, with clothes and what have you. And I do remember those barrel arriving and the clothes coming out of the barrel, and the smell of the clothes is different. Yeah. Yeah. And just noticing that smell from England, of stuff coming out the barrel. And of course, it was in Aladdin's cave. You didn't quite know what to find in a barrel. So it was a really exciting thing whenever a barrel arrived.
Wow.
Yeah. So barrel children was a way of supporting the child in the absence.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do remember, when I came to that event, to start with, it was a bit slow of people asking questions, but then suddenly there was this tidal wave of, and I think maybe it's that thing about permission, once one person sees someone else opening up, then they think, oh, I've got the permission to open up.
And people have had to hold this for 20, 30, 40, 50 years without being given it expression. So suddenly when you say, well, what's your story? Should I speak? Because most of the time, nobody wants me to speak. Nobody really wants to hear my story, So the idea of me saying, yeah, we do. Come on, it's okay to speak. It's kind of, whoa, which is the secret of the NCBI workshop, getting people into the room and giving people permission to speak and to explore and to share. So it starts slowly, and then people warm up to the idea that, oh, okay, I can say what's going on for me. So the proverbial stone in the shoe, we get to stop and take the stone out of our shoe so we can walk again without that limp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's really powerful because I remember, I guess my main motivation for coming to that workshop was I want to learn how to be a better ally, to BIPOC communities, in particular, but I mean, any sort of marginalized community. But then, as you said, actually, I came away saying a lot of things that I probably hadn't said to anybody.
Yes.
Just because it allowed me that space to express myself.
And I've done it publicly, and I've done it in your absence. Acknowledge you as a great example of allyship, because if you hadn't approached me and said, "Do you want to do this TEDx talk?" I would not have spoken so publicly about my Windrush experience. It's contained in an NCBI workshop, but suddenly now it's available on other platforms. There's a TEDx talk that's gone around the world, that people are watching and connecting to. And of course, whenever I speak to people, I say, take this to your family, sit as a family, watch it, and have the conversation. So I big you up as an ally, for having lit that touch paper, where my mind wasn't on that as a notion and way of going forward for telling our story. So yeah, which is great.
No, I appreciate that
Yeah.
acknowledgement. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the process itself, because obviously you were no stranger to being in front of people. You've run thousands probably of workshops over the years, and no doubt probably done a lot of speeches and talks. But how did this experience compare to that?
Well, the first thing is, once we'd agreed, okay, something about Windrush, I actually went home and I recorded myself on that first take. And from the first take to the end, it didn't vary much.
No.
Because I wasn't reaching for material. I was just simply telling my story, so that journey is in me. And the opportunity to meet and to practice and rehearse, and it was phenomenal because we were able to support each other in a way that I know some people have gone on to do a second and third TEDx talk, but the first is your icebreaker. And, you've not been there before. So it was a great experience to walk that journey. And, arriving at the place where you think, yep, okay, I know it. It's my story. Yep, that's it. And I think on the day, of course I know it, this is my story, but there's some other bits I wanted to bring into it. And so what that did was created so I want to bring this in. So I'm not just ad-libbing, there's a structure to this, and remembering the sequence and the structure. And you stand on stage and all these people are looking at you and it's kind of, okay, so there are moments you think, am I really doing this? Is this really happening? So I remember the very first time that I saw myself on camera. I was kind of horrified. Oh my goodness, is that what I look like? Is that what and what have you?
That's interesting to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the same experience.
Yeah. The very first time. And I remember getting feedback from people I'd interviewed, and they talked to me about them experiencing my piercing eyes, and they refer to it as, which is the intensity of my listening. When you're talking, you've got all my attention, and it's an intense, because I'm really hanging on to every word that you say, but they experience it as a sort of piercing eye. So I had to learn to kind of keep moving away, from time to time, in that process.
When you said listening, what do you mean there?
Because most people don't listen. Most people have tennis conversations. And the essence is, when you listen, you should listen with your eyes and your ears and your body. Because if you don't, there's some other thing going on while that person is speaking. So the stillness of listening is an art. And I certainly work to practice that and not be formulating an answer or response, halfway through what somebody is saying. So because I teach about active listening, I try to model that as well. So it was a great experience. It was a great experience in a TEDx talk. Some people have said, when is the next one? And I'm kind of, is there a next one? I don't know.
There could be.
I think there could be a next one. I mean, I've got 1,000 stories to tell. But I like the fact that you said, something about your journey coming to the Caribbean. Okay, I can do that. So I think I would like to respond to an ask or a need, whatever that is, and then I can freely speak about that.
Yeah. I think it's important for anyone listening out there who's thinking of doing a TEDx that it's important to have a key message. I'll talk about this a lot through all of these podcasts.
Yes.
And that's what I think we worked on with you, because we knew that you had a great story and what was the message underneath it, which was around, the separated families and the trauma that's still present in, within that today. So what we've just talked about. So I think that's important for anyone thinking, like, yes, you might have a great story, but like, what's the message that you want to?
That's right. Yeah. And not to cloud it or drown it with too many bits, like, for example, I reflect, I said nothing about my experience with police, at all. And I'm very pleased that it was so, because I want police officers to also watch this TEDx talk and not be thinking, I've got to be on my P's and Q's, what's somebody else having a go at police, and that sort of thing. So I'm really glad that I didn't talk about the police, but of course I talked about an aspect of education.
As a last section, Ronke and I, that's my co-organizer, for those of you who don't know who are listening, invited you to come along to help to both curate and then, as it turned out, train some of the speakers in the most recent edition. I wanted to, if you could just share a little bit about what that experience was like for you.
I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that and would love that opportunity to do that again, because it's team building, and something I do with a city firm, a public sector organization, a voluntary sector, in a school team, wherever. So this is a different aspect of team building. And although the individual is on a stage by themselves, the preparation, the camaraderie, the support is really important, and there was some lovely nuances that came through the TEDx talk, which as a collective we discussed. And oh no, don't go left, go right, and don't step back, step forward. All of those things made a difference in that delivery. And I think it's really important that it's not just simply a case of you go and do a TEDx talk, get on with it. But it is about supporting that person on that journey. And of course, a number of us have done the TEDx talk, so we know what that journey is like. And as I said before, everybody's doing a TEDx talk for the first time. And when you are preparing it, listening or watching a TEDx talk, you think, well, it's this. But actually, the work behind it is deeper. The thoughts behind it, the sentiment, the moral, the story, all of those is deeper. And you're creating something that's unforgettable, for you and for the people watching it.
I think there's a couple of key points there that I want to bring out from what you've said. The first one is that team aspect to it. Ronke and I were really adamant that we wanted to, in a way, we're kind of creating as we went along, but we wanted to, first of all, make sure that people feel that they had sufficient support, but also that they were part of a community, a collective, who were all doing the same thing together. And so they didn't feel like they were alone. And to some extent, when you're practicing by yourself, you kind of have, it's inevitable that you feel that way to some extent, but we wanted to provide that. And certainly the feedback we've had from both cohorts has been that they've appreciated that. So it's not always the case with every TEDx, as I understand it, but certainly if you're thinking of it, applying to speak at one, finding out about their process, I think would be a good thing to do.
And one of the things that happens is that people do their audition and get through on the audition, and as they try to build, they go away from the very thing that got them through the audition. And so there's something about the collective saying, no, what you said in the beginning was right, was perfect. Let's bring the originality of what your message back to the fore. Because something about humanity that I've got to polish this, to something that don't look like the raw experience, because I've
Yes.
got to polish it. And in most cases, we've had to say, no, come back, because the story is in the raw experience. It's not in something that you're now presenting to a CEO because you want another promotion.
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
totally.
yeah.
I think you're absolutely right there. And I noticed that as well, that people often get stuck in the minutiae of the scripting of it, and it must be this way, and that means sometimes that they lose touch with the emotion, the heart, the passion that they have for that topic. And that's really what we're looking for when we're
Yes.
looking for speakers. The number one thing is, do they have a passion for this message that they want to deliver? And so if you lose touch with that, you've kind of lost the the word gold is on your notes there. Like
Yeah.
that is the gold, right?
Yes.
The gold
Yeah.
of the talk is the emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the second thing I wanted to say, was that we noticed that we had to keep bringing people back to that.
Yeah. And that's the benefit of, having been there before, not reinventing the wheel, and having an idea of what works in terms of form and structure, which don't lose anything from the story, just allows people to connect, and if I think in a TEDx talk, you want somebody to say at some point, oh my goodness, I had no idea that was your experience. Or to be able to laugh because a reality, a parody, a reality, a sketch, I can't quite find a word, has just come to life. That paradigm shift, that aha moment. And if you can get any of those out of a TEDx talk, then I think it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, our experience of living 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years is in itself a story.
Yes,
Definitely.
Yeah. I think there's a story in every life, and at least one story. And from that, there's probably a message. So.
Yes. And, the idea about us as human beings is about learning. What's the lesson that I can learn? So I don't need to have the bad experience because I've learned the lesson.
Yeah, so then you can give people the benefit of your wisdom.
Absolutely. Yeah. Although there are some people who still need to go through the bad experience, but hopefully if we say, no, there's a hole there, don't go left, people will take heed of that.
Right. Yeah. So I guess just to round up then, is there anything else that you would say to someone thinking of giving a talk or getting involved with TEDx in some way that you'd like to share?
Remember when my TEDx talk went out live and it got a few and it was okay. And then I think when it passed 100, that was the point when I thought, I don't own this anymore. I don't own this anymore. And I can't pull it back. It's out there. So I've had to let go.
Just let go of it.
I've had to let go. And what's really fascinating for me in my journey, when I sit and watch the TEDx talk, my TEDx talk with people in the room, I'm watching it like they're watching it. I'm seeing it as they're seeing it. And every time I see it, I get something different from watching it.
Wow.
Yeah. So the growing is exponential.
Seeing yourself back, you're learning from yourself.
But I'm not seeing myself, I'm seeing this person.
Right.
Yeah, so just as they're seeing this person, I'm seeing this person.
Wow.
And I didn't realize it would be so, but that is how it is for me. That so I'm having an experience with a room full of people, that I can talk to, and just in the places where some people would get emotional, I would get emotional listening to this guy. which is something that I couldn't have scripted. Well, it's me, it's my TEDx. No, but it's it's live for me every time I watch it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's a day when I'll climatize to it all, but certainly every time I've watched it, there's a new experience. There's a feeling. Yeah.
So thanks again for joining me, and long may your association with TEDx Beckenham continue.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to continue to support that capacity. And my final word is that on the day of my funeral, I want my TEDx talk to be shown on the day of my funeral.
Oh, that really touched me.
Yeah. Because my guess is that I don't know how many people turn up, and what often happens in terms of Black funerals, you'll easily get 100 or 200 people there, so I want even then to influence people to begin to look and to tell their own story, so yeah.
Wow. Thanks so much. Very honored.
Yeah. My pleasure. Will it get on the curriculum at school rather than this boat came from the Caribbean? Here's an experience of, a Caribbean boy on living and coming to Britain to support Britain.
Yeah. And a real life story, not something you're reading in a book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to try and get Steve McQueen to turn it into a film.
Well, I'm sure in a few years we could be having another conversation about the film adaptation. Thanks again to Royston for spending time with me on the sofa. Tune in next time if you want more insights into how you can create deeper connections and spark action from sharing your ideas from the stage.